Good evening and welcome to our COVID-19 update program. I'm Neota Igwe, and the headlights this hour. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is optimistic Nigeria's economy will bounce back after COVID-19 pandemic. Bayelsa residents defy all safety protocols amidst active cases and fatalities recorded in the state. And the United Kingdom records its highest daily toll of COVID-19 since mass testing began. Now, it will cost, sources say it will cost between $1,000 and $1,500 for a vehicle to be compressed natural gas compliant. Well, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, says the government will bear the cost for this switchover, or at least reduce it for the average person. Now, the federal government had recently started toying with the idea of moving from selling premium motor spirits to consumers to selling compressed natural gas, claiming that this would save the country 900 billion naira annually and effectively end fuel scarcity in the country. The Vice President was speaking at a webinar organized by the Africa Report, where he broke down Nigeria's post-COVID plans, which he says are embodied in the Economic Sustainability Plan. He says the ESP, which costs about 2.3 trillion naira and is funded by the budgetary sources, structured loans from the Central Bank of Nigeria, and some of the emergency financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund, will be distributed to farmers through the federal government's Jobs for Agriculture program, Mass Housing program, the Solar Connections project, and other initiatives.
We'll be able to get. All we have is 500 billion for the budget. That's what I'm saying, for the economic sustainability plan. But in 2018, in 2019, we paid 546 billion in subsidies. Previously, 722 billion. Now, with 60% less revenue, we just don't have the money. That's the honest truth. We simply don't have the money. So what are we doing? We've decided then that we've got to focus on CNG, on compressed natural gas.
Now, Nigeria's 60th anniversary is just a couple of days away, and the federal government has decided that that celebration will be low-key because of the outbreak of the coronavirus. The Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, says the federal government has approved lists of activities staggered till the end of September 2021 to commemorate Nigeria's Diamond Jubilee. He also faults the argument that there is no reason to celebrate at 60, considering the numerous challenges facing the country, insisting that the answer to that argument is contained in the theme for the celebration.
The 60th Independence Anniversary celebration will be low-key, as our President has already announced. Of course, this is not unconnected with the COVID-19 global pandemic, which has forced some safety protocols on nations around the world. Let me say here that the 60th anniversary celebration will be celebrated for a whole 1 year, ending September 30th, 2021. This, however, does not mean there will be daily activities between now and September 30th, 2021, but that there will be staggered events during the period. Now, some may wonder why Nigeria needs to celebrate its Diamond Jubilee at all, considering the myriad of socio-economic challenges facing the country. And our answer to that is contained in our theme of Together. For a country that has gone through a bitter internecine civil war, years of political crisis, daunting social challenges, including religious and ethnic crises, etc., our unity and our resilience, which, by the way, is what Diamond represents, are worth celebrating.
Meanwhile, the states are not relenting in their efforts. Let's go to Jigawa State, where the government says it's ramped up testing and introduced more sample collection centers in different parts. The Executive Secretary of the Jigawa State Primary Healthcare Agency, Dr. Kabir Ibrahim, confirmed this to Channels Television at the State Secretariat in Dutse, the state capital. According to him, the state has tested over 2,000 suspected cases since the outbreak of the coronavirus, where it got 322 positive cases and 11 deaths.
This is the Center for Infectious Diseases in Dutse, the Jigawa state capital. The building, which was used as an isolation center for COVID-19 patients, has been closed after all the patients recovered and have been discharged. At the State Secretariat, while some people here care to observe the COVID-19 protocols, others ignore as they pass by the sanitizers reserved at the reception. For some time now, the state has not recorded a single positive case of COVID-19, and this has raised concern on testing capacity in Jigawa State. However, the Executive Secretary, Jigawa State Primary Healthcare Agency, Dr. Kabir Ibrahim, believes testing has not been stopped, only that the cases are not visible.
We have operated and activated 11 additional testing sites. Sample collection sites rather. All the general hospitals, 11 of them around the state, are now. We have already identified people who have the capacity to do training. To be trained, and who can go ahead and collect samples. And these samples, they will now be submitting them to the molecular lab on a daily basis. Not only that these people are collecting this sample, but we have provided logistics for their transportation from all across these 11 other sites, so that people do not have to travel long distances in order to get tested.
As the state says it is testing to contain the unknown spread of the virus, hope is rising that people continue to strictly adhere to preventive safety measures.
And in Bayelsa State, the number of active cases for the coronavirus have consistently been reducing for the past weeks, and the reduction in the number of positive cases may have led the residents of the state to let down their guards, as most of them now go into public places without wearing a face mask.
I am at the Okaka Market in the Yenegua Metropolis in Bayelsa State, and we've observed that the NCDC guideline to curb the spread of the coronavirus is not being observed. This is the second market we visited today. The first was the Swali ultra-modern market, and everywhere we went to, we discovered that social distancing, wearing of the face masks, and other stipulated guidelines were not being adhered to.
Though there is need, if I said that extremely that we abide by the COVID-19 rules and law, as at the moment now, before then, we are following up, we abide by those laws. But as at the moment that, for the look of things, let me not even lie, that the wearing of all those face masks has been reduced. Then the washing of hands. It's just only most of the shops that do even bring up their water, soap to wash their hand. So it's something that I would just say that it's not totally that we are still even abide by the COVID-19 rules and regulation. When the pandemic came, it was, even this my market was about to be shut down. But later, they say half-day operation in the markets, which is from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Later on, they now even bring up the market to close at 3 o'clock. Now, as at the moment now, the state has even considered the market to operate fully as it was. We have come back to normalcy.
The risk is there, but we pray God always that such thing, they should not discover such issue in this market, because the area that they discover that type of COVID-19 disease, the people, that area always locked down totally.
Bayelsa State has a total of 395 confirmed cases for COVID-19. 370 persons have already been discharged, and there are 4 active cases as are the records today from the isolation center. The state has also recorded 21 deaths. From Yenegua, Dobra Timiwood for COVID-19 updates.
Meanwhile, 3 smart walk-through sample collection booths from the government of the Republic of Korea had been donated to Nigeria to help boost COVID-19 sample collection and testing, as well as reduce infection among health workers. The Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, who was on ground to receive the donation at the NCDC reference laboratory in Abuja, says the donated items will support the government's efforts to ramp up testing for the virus. I believe that there are those who believe that those countries that have an acceptable rate of COVID-19 transmission may experience a second wave of the COVID-19. Looking at this data now, this rise and fall of cases clearly indicates a country's response to the virus, where leadership and science went hand in hand and the pandemic response was effective. This curve went down after the initial rise. However, even the most successful countries need to face that their successful virus response gives only temporary relief. Here in Nigeria, the experts are warning of a second wave as Nigerians shun the safety protocols, as we've seen in some states, for example, in Bayelsa State, where our correspondent was out into town earlier today. Joining us now to discuss this is Dr. Amina Ahmadu Bello, a public health physician. She joins us via Skype from Festac. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Amina Bello.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. So the first wave of the coronavirus ending with the lower cases in Nigeria. But you now notice that some of the residents of the country appear not to be bothered anymore. As far as they are concerned, the news that was going to be really fatal is not happening. But should that be the case?
Actually, it shouldn't be, because COVID-19 is everywhere in the whole world. It's global. It's a global disease, and infectious disease that is affecting the whole world, and it's still in Nigeria, very much around in Nigeria. People are not just bothered anymore because they feel that we do not have high numbers as we used to have a few weeks ago. But we actually feel that it's not a very good thing for people to just stray away all the precautionary measures that are supposed to be taken to prevent themselves from having been infected with COVID-19. It's not the best thing at all.
Dr. Ahmad Bello,
despite the low numbers that we're seeing.
Indeed, the numbers have continued to, or appear to be going down almost every other day, maybe a few changes here and there. But what are those factors that can trigger a second wave? Should we even ride the first safely?
Yeah, but the truth is, if we continue with the very careless attitude that we're carrying about now, it's very possible that we would have a second wave. People not minding the distance between each other, not wearing face masks, not washing their hands as often as possible, not keeping the proper hygiene, not keeping the proper precautionary measures actually that are supposed to carry on with life. So if we're not doing it as we're supposed to do, then there's a possibility of it coming back in full measure again. I mean, and affecting people as it were, because we've let everything loose, and everyone is just going about their case, their days without any precautions at all.
So see the situation as it is now. So those residents in some parts of the country are not really bothered anymore. And then the international flights have resumed into and out of Nigeria. Should there be reason to worry, seeing that in Europe they're experiencing a second wave already?
The thing is, because we do not know exactly, because we're testing enough, people aren't coming out to test as they should. So we're not very sure if perhaps we even have it with us now, because the numbers we're seeing, yes, they're low. We have a low positivity rate, despite. But then, with people coming in, the flight space is open, so there are people coming in and going out. So there's a very good possibility that it will be brought back in. The borders are open, the ports are open, the airports are open. So people are coming in from different countries. And I just hope that we do not have a second wave with a different strain that probably would affect us even more. So we really do need to continue holding doing the preventive measures and making sure that we do not lose our guard on the spread of COVID-19.
A couple of times. Why is it that we're not testing enough? I mean, we heard from, for instance, in Jigawa, they talked about they've increased sample collection sites and testing areas. And indeed, we've heard that at one point we heard from the Presidential Task Force that people are not even willing to go to the test site. But why do you think we're not testing enough?
I think it's very apathy from people that they're not, the usual mistrust and misinformation that apparent thought that COVID-19 has left us. So they're not coming out to carry out the test as it were. So there's really nothing much you can do except for risk communication, to talk to people enough. I mean, try to have the behavioral change so that they would come out to test when they have symptoms of COVID-19, they're coughing, they're having fever and all of that, so they can come out and test for COVID-19. The logistics are available, but then people aren't coming out to test.
Dr. Ahmad Bello, you're a public health physician and you know the nature of our country and the residents of our country. Are you suggesting that we should maybe stand out on the roads, use every means possible to let everyone see that this thing is still out there and we need to take up some more precaution? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, I think that more stakeholders should come in, more actually come in. It shouldn't just be government talking. So more people should come in, NGOs, CDOs, religious leaders, community influencers. They should come out to talk to people more, have more trainings, talk to people so that there can be some behavioral change on health attitudes towards COVID. So at least people would buy the idea of coming out to carry out this test and finding out that because the processes of actually making sure that this is out of is kept at bay is making sure that we're that to be
Dr. Ahmad Bello, public health physician. We will get back to her. I don't know if she's there, but we're having problems with that signal. Probably get back to her, to walk us through all of this, especially in the face of what's happening. Schools are resuming everywhere. The worship centers have opened up, and more people are moving around than they used to. What would it take for us not to run into a second wave? And how do we handle the children in situations like this? Hopefully, we'll get back Dr. Ahmad Bello. But let's move on now. We'll take a moment and we'll come back. The Yobe State Independent Electoral Commission reschedules its earlier December 5 local government elections. We'll bring you details in a moment.
COVID-19, a new strain of virus from the family of coronaviruses, has been recorded in over 200 countries, areas, and territories around the world. The highly infectious virus is transmitted primarily via droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose of an infected person through coughing or sneezing. These droplets can then be acquired by anyone in close contact through breathing in the droplets or by touching objects and surfaces with the droplets and then touching the nose, mouth, or eyes. While it's been said that some infected persons may not display symptoms, common signs of COVID-19 infection include dry cough, fever, sore throat or diarrhea, and difficulty in breathing. Do you or someone close to you have these symptoms? Call the following numbers.
Thank you for staying with us. 111 new cases of COVID-19 were reported overnight by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. This brings the total number of confirmed cases to 57,724. Last night, the NCDC stated that new cases were reported from 12 states of the Federation, including Lagos, where 31 cases were recorded. Other states with new cases include Gombe, 31, Kaduna, 18, the FCT, 15, 14 cases from Rivers State. Meanwhile, Imo, Kwara, and Oyo have 3 cases each. 2 cases were reported from Bayelsa and Edo State, as well as Osun, that reported 1 case each. The NCDC report shows that 48,985 have recovered and discharged, while 1,102 deaths have been recorded so far. Now, in Yobe State, the Electoral Commission there has rescheduled its local government elections from December 5, 2020 to February 27, 2021 after recording 2 cases of COVID-19. The executive chairman of the commission, Dr. Maman Mohammed, disclosed this in Damaturu, the state capital, while briefing journalists. He says the change became necessary after receiving the NCDC election guidelines and INEC policy document during the coronavirus pandemic. The state chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, Mr. Umar Kukuri, says an immediate meeting with all leaders of political parties in the state will hold to discuss the matter.
After due consultation with our critical stakeholders, we find it necessary to readjust the date of our proposed elections to prevent the spread and the escalation of the incidence of the virus manifestation in Yobe State. Our local government council election, earlier scheduled for 5th December 2020, is hereby shifted to hold on 27th of February 2021. A new schedule of election activities is being reviewed and will be released very soon.
Now, the disregard for the COVID-19 protocols outlined by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, particularly the non-pharmaceutical measures, is a worry for the Benue State government. A visit to the capital earlier today shows some views that the coronavirus is still an elitist virus. Our correspondent Paras Angbo tells us more.
The World Health Organization has recommended the use of face masks as one of the non-pharmaceutical measures to combat the spread of COVID-19. However, in Benue State, population here think that it is not true that we have COVID-19. Some of them whom I spoke with believe that COVID-19 is a sickness for the rich.
As me like this, as poor man like this, I know they travel outside. So Corona knows I will come where I did. I know they sleep inside AC. My them motor, their motor they get AC. Understand? But where they sleep and now heat throughout. Okada assist on, even they hit me. And so I know say they will wear face mask. To say they wear face mask, face mask is not even the first preventing measure to me. Because man, the money we are even touching, like this man like this, the money he used, I carry this man, the money he give me, as I don't have the sanitizer, I will start to sanitize my hand before. As I will not have sanitize my hand, I'll still use the hand again to even take a hand inside my nose and my eyes again. So Corona in Nigeria or in Benue is not affecting white people like us.
Other respondents think that the distribution and management of palliatives, especially face masks, alcohol-based hand sanitizers, have not been properly managed.
So when it comes to the issue of palliative, it will be as if government knows some group of people and some group of people are not known. But if government actually want to distribute this palliative accordingly, there are ways. We have, here in Benue State, we have 3 senatorial districts. In these 3 senatorial districts, we also have wards, council wards. Here in Makurdi, we have council wards. So if government want to actually do something, like now here, this is Okada. We have, here we that are gathered here, we are Okada. We have Okada Union. In this union, we have branches. So if you want to distribute something, you know, at these various units, you know how to get there. But now, government will carry palliatives. We just hear it on the radio. We just see it on the television that they are distributing palliatives in this so location. If you go there, you will not see anything.
From high-level marketer in Makodi, the Benue State capital, Pius Angbo for COVID-19 updates.
And in Plateau State, the state commander of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps is joining forces with the state government to enforce the efforts at straightening the curve with the assurances of enforcing protocol guidelines across the local government areas. The Plateau State Commandant of the Civil Defense Corps, Stephen Giason, he told journalists at the state command after taking over as the new commandant that the importance of adherence to the protocol guidelines in curtailing the spread, the state is preparing to reopen schools.
On COVID-19, it's a worldwide program. And we thank God, Nigeria is not like other countries that people fall on the road and die. God has blessed us in this country that we don't fall victim to COVID-19 like that. But whatever we're going to be doing now is to support the government in terms of social distance, in terms of this washing of hands, everything, and the nose masks. We'll make sure that people comply with all these little things so that Plateau will go down on the issue of COVID-19. So we'll just try our best by putting in place the measures that government has already put, that's Federal Ministry of Health. We'll comply with them and support the government very well.
Now let's look at this matter of protocol, adherence to the protocol and guidelines, and how we can curb and straighten out the curve of COVID-19 spread. And we're being joined by a consultant public health physician, Dr. Modupe Akinyika. Thank you for joining us. Dr.
Thank you very
Akinyika.
much.
It's good to have you there. So you've heard the news, or I'm sure you've been very observant and seeing what's going on in different parts of the country. How, for instance, in Benue State, our reporter went out into town, and from the feelers he got, COVID-19 is still an elitist illness. It's not affecting the masses or the poor. But I'm sure you do not agree with that.
No, I don't agree with that.
So why do you think that there's still that notion out there that it's an elitist disease, it's not affecting the poor?
Well, people feel that way because the predictions that we had about, or that the world had about Africa and Nigeria hasn't come to pass. You know, predictions about maybe there'll be people falling on the streets and then dead and all of that. But thankfully, the effect of COVID-19 has been easier on us than in other countries. When you look at our figures, when you look at our death rates and all, and the number of deaths actually, attributed to COVID-19, and you compare them with other countries, it's not been as bad. And so people have that, feeling that, okay, so many don't even know anybody that has been affected and all of that, that is personal to them. But of course, those that know that COVID-19 is real, and those that have had friends, colleagues, and people like health workers that have seen people with this disease know that definitely it is in the world, it is in Nigeria, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we protect ourselves and protect our families from getting it.
Okay, the reports have it that we've not done up to 1 million tests. Now, if that is the information we have, not up to 1 million tests, and the figures so far show about 57,000 plus confirmed cases in the country, should it be a reason for us to celebrate? Are we really straightening out the curve? And what should we do to increase the testing, seeing that we have capacity ramping up in different states of the federal and even the federal government?
I don't think it's a cause to celebrate, because the fact that we haven't done enough tests It's not something to celebrate about. In fact, something to be concerned about, because our population is 200 million approximately, and we haven't even covered up to like 1% of that population. So it's something that is like a drawback for us. So we should actually try to do more testing so that at least if there are cases, then we can deal with those cases. Because as it is now, if you don't test, then you're not going to be able to find out who has it. And we find that many people do have it, but they may have mild symptoms, and so they may not even want to get tested. So we need to scale up our testing and get more people tested. And then there was news recently, I saw it somewhere, I don't know how reliable that is, that only about four states were still testing actively, and that's not a good thing, because all the other states that had COVID, or that there have been COVID-19 cases, they also should continue to test for COVID-19 and ensure that at least we're able to get out people that are infected and then keep them from infecting other people.
So what would you say to the school of thought that says there are many other illnesses that are plaguing the Nigerian society? So COVID-19 might just be coming in, and because of the amount of medication already consumed, it's somewhat like dampened. Its effects are dampened.
Well, I wouldn't say its effects are dampened because of the medication, because, well, I don't know, maybe several people were taking chloroquine, but for how long can you continue to take chloroquine? And true, there are many other diseases. So if we're able to get rid of COVID, then it becomes a strength for us to be able to deal with the other diseases as well, because we can use, similar strategies, public health strategies, to be able to deal with those other diseases like malaria, diseases like Lassa fever. There are diseases that are still plaguing us. So we need to deal with them. But COVID-19 is also a disease that is plaguing, not just Nigeria at this point in time, but the whole world. So dealing with disease is something we need to keep doing, and we will have to do and become better at it.
Indeed. So schools are resuming gradually, however, being staggered. But then there's our fear of the second wave in Europe, for instance, and around the world. Should Nigerians be concerned, especially now that children are going back to school?
Oh, definitely. I think Nigerians should be concerned, because there's this general apathy now that you see. Many people are not using, they're not making use of the public health measures, the protective measures that they are supposed to adhere to. You find that when you go out, you're like the only one wearing a mask, and people are not doing what they're supposed to do. So we should be concerned, because what we're seeing in those other countries, we don't want that to happen in Nigeria. Some other countries are even thinking about another lockdown. We can't afford that in Nigeria. So everyone should make sure that they are taking those precautions. They are washing their hands, they are wearing their masks, and even the children, as we send them to school, we should continue to repeat this to them, reiterate it to them, so that they also will imbibe this present culture of keeping safe by wearing a face mask, physically distancing from people, washing your hands frequently, and not touching your face whenever you have not washed your hands. Right? So it's something we need to keep doing. We can't afford to stop now, because we don't want that second wave in this country.
And while that's happening in the schools, if you go to the schools that have reopened, for instance, in Lagos, they do the temperature gauge, they do hand washing, and then social distancing, even amongst some of the students. But how would you advise the teachers and proprietors and managers of schools how would you advise them in the bid to identify students who might be showing some symptoms here and there, and what should they do in situations like that?
Okay, once the students come into the school and they are checked, that it's a kind of screening that is done for them, and the temperature is higher than normal, then that is the cause for them to separate that student and then ask about details. So they would now ask, about symptoms of COVID, which, is common knowledge now for everybody. Any cough, any fever, any chest pain, any difficulty with breathing, any loss of taste or loss of smell, and all of that. So if they are able to detect that the student is having any of those symptoms, or even if it's just that high temperature, then that student should be isolated. So there should be a designated place for isolation in the school. And then, of course, once that is done, once the student is isolated in that place, then arrangements for testing should be done so that students that present with such symptoms can be quickly separated from the rest of the students, so that there isn't more infection of students. Because we had recently from one university in the UK, where they are having clusters of infection, all right, of COVID-19 from social activities within the school. So if such, one of those students that had such symptoms or had something to signify that, something was going on about COVID, had been identified and then isolated, then it would have prevented that. So we need to prevent it so that our children do not get infected, and then we're not having clusters of COVID-19 infection. And then if they do get infected, it becomes even more dangerous for everybody, because what it means is that they take it home and then they go and give it to the older ones. And the older ones are more likely to suffer severe forms, to suffer from severe forms of the disease. So it's something we don't want at all. So every school should have that arrangement in place, such that once that is detected, that sort of thing is detected, then there's a way of separating the students, making sure that student is isolated and then tested. And then, of course, parents should also be aware that when their children have such symptoms, they're running a fever or they're coughing, they're not feeling well, they shouldn't go to school. They shouldn't go to school at all. They should stay home and then hopefully get tested as well.
Across the world. This is the last question I'm going to ask you. Talk us through what should be done across the country, the role of discipline and information management in order to manage or prevent a second wave across the country.
So across the country, we need to still engage our people. We need to engage the people at the grassroots, people in the markets, the people on the streets, and let them know. Because many of these people listen to news and they see that that this COVID-19 is still raging. For example, in America, still raging. So the second wave coming up in June. So they should, we need to engage them and then get them to ensure that each person is taking personal responsibility, protecting himself or herself and her family. Because remember, if anybody gets COVID-19, the most likely people to get it first will be members of that person's family. And nobody does that. So we need to engage the people and ensure this is it.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Mudugbe Akinyika is a consultant public health physician, and she joined us via Skype. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now, the Adamawa State government has announced Monday, October the 12th, 2020 as the date for the reopening of both public and private schools from the basic tertiary levels across the state. Governor Umar Fintiri also expressed that his government will not leave any stone unturned towards ensuring enforcement of COVID-19 protocols, further directing the Ministry of Education and Human Capital Development to meet with stakeholders in the education sector to discuss modalities for reopening. Meanwhile, the state is set to establish sample collection centers in all the 21 local government areas of Adamawa State. According to the NCDC Technical Advisor Implementation Project, Adamawa State has not been testing for about 2 weeks now, which might not be unconnected to the low record of new positive cases of the coronavirus in the state.
Our mandate is to support states in this response. We want states to take responsibility in this response. So we intend to decentralize We intend to decentralize sample collection centers in all the 21 local governments. These sample collection centers will be located in strategic areas in these local governments. The risk communication pillar will also sensitize the community in the need to test. When we start this testing, our target is to test at least 500 samples in a day in Adamawa State. In long run, we want to achieve at least 1% of the population being tested, which is about 35 to 40,000. So at the end of this intervention, NCDC will now tell Nigerians the true story of our status. But we can't really see if we are flattening or declining now, because our testing rate has declined by about 36%, and also our positivity rate too has declined by about 16%.
Now, more than 6,600 coronavirus cases have been recorded in the United Kingdom today, making it the highest figure since mass testing began in the country. The latest figure takes the overall number of confirmed cases to 416,363 and a death toll of 41,902. Here is the global update for today.
EU health officials say Europe is at a decisive moment, with countries on the brink of national lockdowns. Officials say a surge in COVID-19 cases risk becoming a deadly double epidemic as the flu season approaches.
We cannot lower our guard. This crisis is not behind us. Moreover, autumn and winter are the time of the year for more respiratory illnesses, including seasonal influenza. To prevent what could potentially be a lethal twindemic of COVID-19 and the flu, which could overburden our health systems and lead to more loss of life, we need to increase the coverage of vaccination rates.
In France, the health ministry reports on Thursday that the number of people in intensive care due to coronavirus has jumped over 1,000 for the first time since June the 8th. Meanwhile, already heavily hit by France's COVID-19 lockdown this year, Paris bars and restaurants will have to endure another blow as the government has announced their partial closures due to the rise in infections in the capital's metropolitan area. Starting from Monday, bars and restaurants will be required to halt service at 10 p.m. and prefects have the power to require an earlier curfew. Spain's health minister says residents in Madrid have tough weeks ahead over the coronavirus surge and will have to act with determination in order to take control of the pandemic in the region. With coronavirus cases rising, England and Wales have launched a new COVID-19 contact tracing app after months of delays and amid criticism that the app does not work on some older mobile phones. Meanwhile, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has announced the new job support scheme starting in November. It replaces the furlough scheme and means the government will pay part of workers' wages who have lost hours. And finally, sniffer dogs are using their noses for a different purpose, to sniff out the coronavirus. Dogs specially trained to detect COVID-19 have started sniffing passengers as part of a trial at Finland's Helsinki-Vantaa airport. The dog's efficiency has not been proven in comparative scientific studies, so passengers who volunteer to be tested and are suspected of carrying the disease are instructed to also take a swab to confirm the result.
And that's our package on COVID-19 update program for tonight. Visit our website, channelstv.com, and take a closer look at some of the global numbers in real time. You'll also get more updates and better understanding of all you need to do to stay safe during this period. And of course, there are other stories on politics, business, and sport. To join us for a fresh package of the program tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Neota Igbe, and good night.